may be seated.
I feel like I've been to church. That was good. That's good being with you all. Good to hear you sing. Good to just be family. Wow. We sometimes get excited about what's going on here at Brookline. I just want to make sure I say it and that we always remember it, that God should get all of the credit, all of the praise, and all of the glory. And I hope you know that. That's our intention today. We skipped ahead in Matthew chapter 9, if you were here last week, just talk about that resurrection story. But I want to go back and pick up another day in the life of Jesus. So back to chapter 8. We're going to read. You can read along or just listen. It won't be up there. Just listen. Jesus and his followers, if we were paying attention to Matthew and Mark and Luke, we know about this time. He's in Capernaum, kind of his home away from home. He's a man without a home, but this is as close as he gets to being a home. And it's the Sabbath. They've been to the synagogue, as all good Jews would do on the Sabbath. So now he is doing, well, just pay attention. Chapter 8, starting in verse 14. When Jesus came into Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. And he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she got up and began to wait on him. We don't know much about Peter yet in Matthew. He was the brother of Andrew. We know that. He was a fisherman with his brother, and they were out with their boats and fishing and with their nets. In chapter 4, we're kind of introduced to them as Jesus calls them to follow him, and they did. They left their nets and their boats. They just left it all and followed Jesus with the promise, you will now fish for men, if they even understood what that meant. Now we learned something else here about Peter that maybe you didn't even know after you know the Bible pretty well, that he was married. We don't know her, his wife, her name, but he's married because here's his mother-in-law. We don't know her name either, but here she is, she's sick, in bed with a fever. When we have a fever, we pop an aspirin or Tylenol or Motrin, or we'll stagger them and load ourselves up, and usually we don't even need a doctor. If it gets worse, if it persists, if it gets higher, we may call the doctor. We got urgent care, we got the emergency room, we got all kinds of, we can even call and they'll come pick us up in the ambulance if it gets bad. What'd they do back then? I don't know. They had doctors, not on every corner, not in every city, but they had doctors, I assume. We know they did because Dr. Luke, one of the ones who wrote in the Gospels, he wrote that she had a high fever. So was it serious? Was she just uncomfortable or burning up? Is it loathsome or life-threatening? We don't know, but Jesus doesn't think twice. He touches her and he heals her. And we here in this church, we believe Jesus can, and he did. And the fever like that is gone. Interesting note, you don't have to know this, but interesting. Back in 1968, they excavated this house in Capernaum, not very far from the synagogue, and they saw some graffiti, some Christian graffiti, and it had been at some point transformed almost from a house to a church maybe, and some of the experts believe without knowing for sure, that might have been Peter's house. And wouldn't that be cool if the place they excavated, they can see that's where Peter lived, and that's where Jesus stands right now next to a bed of a sick woman who isn't sick anymore. The healing takes place. It's immediate. It's complete. And it says she gets up. Notice what she does next. She gets up and waits on him. Some might say them. Some folks shy away from this service. The word service sounds like, it might be like slavery. That doesn't sound good. We know our history, and that may make people uncomfortable. Also, waiting on somebody. I mean, a woman who's waiting on a man. I mean, what's this? I mean, people are offended by this, right? I mean, we don't live in the slavery days, and women weren't put on this earth to serve men. Still didn't get an amen. But the Bible is not shy about those kind of words. She was healed. She got up and got down. She got up, stood up, and went right down to washing feet, in a manner of speaking. She's taking care of their needs. And what that had to be is just a deep, deep sense of gratitude. She does what comes natural to her. She's saying, thank you. It's humility, it's gratitude, it's worship. A grateful sinner, once sick, now healthy, and honoring the one who is all-powerful and worthy of this. And she does it graciously. And it turns all of us, this being healed, as Chad talked about, it makes all of us, turns us all into grateful ministers who serve people with love. David Stewart says, we are saved to serve. Paul the Apostle, Ephesians 2 said, we are his workmanship, the Lord's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which you were made in advance to do. It was planned for you, it was prepared for you, so that you would serve. So please consider, if you are a Christian and not serving somewhere, not serving someone, it's time to rethink what you're doing. Well, if the word hadn't gotten out yet because of Jesus healing a leper or a centurion's servant, now a woman just got up after a fever, immediately healthy, and start serving. And people are finding out. People are starting to come in droves. Those who desperately need what Jesus has to offer. Keep reading, verse 16. When evening came, many who were demon-possessed were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick. And this was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took up our infirmities and bore our diseases. The Sabbath, if it was coming to a close now, the sun is setting and people are now free to work again or to move and travel and carry things and do something that's productive. They are not bound anymore by the Sabbath day, the Sabbath law, so they move, and here they come. And all of them, Matthew doesn't give us a number, but it looks like you can see a sizable crowd coming, streaming in, saying, I want a miracle. Give me some, sir, please. There are these two basic groups of people. I don't know how big the crowd is, but two groups who are mingling together. One is physically sick and one is demon-possessed. Some people, when they look at the Bible and read some of this and they interpret it, they assume they just didn't understand sickness back then. So if you've ever watched this is sad to watch, if you ever watched somebody have an epileptic attack and they lie on the ground and they can't stop shaking, it's scary. And so people say, well, back then they didn't know epilepsy. They weren't that smart, so that must have been demon possession. That's not true. Matthew's not an idiot. Dr. Luke is no imbecile either. None of the writers are confused at this. God, who authored this, is not misunderstanding the situation. There were demons and there was sickness, and both groups came, and Jesus had no problem with either one. Everybody came and he healed him. It says even with just a word he cast out demons. I wonder if he used a word like I do with our dog Sam. Go! Get! Maybe even a little shove. No, it's not abuse. Just a little shove with my foot. Go! Away! Or with a disease. I wonder with another touch. He loves to touch people and heal them with just a word there or done or good. I wonder what he's saying when he's doing these things. I have to wonder. But these people, too, it's no wonder why they're coming. If I had somebody in my family, if I was the one who was sick or demon-possessed, I would be there in that line. I would be pushing to see Jesus. Sir, me too, me next. My daughter, my father, somebody needs you. Please, sir, please help us. I bet those people who were healed were sticking around too, pressing in on him just to say, could I just say one more time, thank you? Did I say that already? Yeah, 100 times. I know. One more time, thank you. Those who needed to be healed and those who had just been healed, you could just feel the pressure around Jesus. And it gets to a place where he has to think about something else, getting away. It's a lot. It's a lot. Even the tears of joy, the celebration that used to be suffering and torment, crying out, it had to be so much that it's time. And listen to what he suggests, verse 18. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. He needs this. They needed him, and he needed a break. He is fully God, but he's in every way human too. And he's going to need a little time for himself. It's emotionally draining. And with the power going out of him, I wonder what it was like. He needs a retreat. And he's going until he's intercepted by one who has something to say. Verse 19. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, Teacher, I'll follow you wherever you go. That sounds impressive, right? Especially who it is. That's a scribe. A one who wrote the law became an expert in the law. So a scribe became a teacher. Now, you didn't just know it, you knew it enough to explain it. And you won't find in the New Testament scribes who are flocking to Jesus. So this is impressive. I want to follow you. Sounds like he's sold out. He's gung-ho. He's ready to go. Anywhere. You name it, I'm with you. But is he sincere? I don't know. But instead of congratulating him or saying, well then, sir, come on, follow me, Jesus challenges him with this. Listen, foxes have dens, birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Jesus likes to call himself, especially in Matthew, but he likes to call himself the Son of Man. That may seem like a humble thing, and it is. It can be, but it's also a prophetic thing, going all the way back to Jonah. It's hearkening back to what was said about him even before he came to earth. He's a fulfillment of God's plan, a product of prophecy. He's the one God sent with full authority. And this isn't just a humble thing to say, this title. It's an authoritative way to say, I have come. And he's suffering with the people while curing them. This is what he came to do. Why is he telling this man about foxes and birds and dens and nests? That's what you say to elementary kids. Because this man doesn't understand. He hasn't quite got it yet, what is going to be called upon him to do. If he wants to follow, it's not so nice at times. Like, where do you call home? Now, we think of people who don't have a house, a home is sad. And our hearts hurt for somebody that says, I'm homeless. Most of us, I would assume most all of us, have a home. And you can give me the address, and you can give me direction. You say, and my bedroom is there, and that's my bed, and that's my pillow. And every night I go home and I put my head on my pillow and I go to sleep. And Jesus said, I don't have that. Do you know that? Do you know that you won't have that if you're with me? At the end of a hard day, he doesn't say, let's go home to my house and I'll lay in my bed. You won't have that either, he says to this man. Do you know that? Before you jump into the boat or follow me in my footsteps, do you understand this? Have you counted the cost, I think is what he's saying. This commitment is going to be a big commitment. Are you ready for this? It looks like while the first guy is still maybe contemplating what Jesus has just said, here comes another. Another disciple said to him, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. So he's going to follow too. He kind of already is. This one's on his way already in some ways. But I'm going to do this in a big way. But one more thing, I just need to bury my father. Once again, though, notice, no congratulations, no invitation, no way to go, man. Come on, let's do it. Verse 22, but Jesus told him, follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. You ever thought of that? What does he mean by that? Let the dead bury the dead. It can be interpreted, let the spiritually dead bury the physically dead. Maybe that's what he's getting at. As Jesus taking a stand here against funerals, you as a follower of Jesus must never go to a funeral, especially not your parents. I don't think he's saying that. Even in rabbinic writings, the Jewish leaders understood a funeral, especially the burial of your father, of greatest honor. You can forego some other things like your daily prayers to do that duty. So the death of a father, a parent, it's proper to bury them. It's important in this culture. So why is Jesus saying this? Wright imagines what he doesn't say. He could have said, well, yes, my man, I appreciate your help and wanting to follow me. Why don't you go take care of that business, and then later, if you have time, follow me. He doesn't say that. It's shocking to hear Jesus reply to a man who just said, I will follow you. He says, then follow me and let somebody else take care of that business. Does he mean like the professionals, like your family? Hey, just so you know, you might want to consider this because it was pointed out by several different experts. The man's father may not even be dead yet. It was a saying back then. It was a way of saying, I have responsibilities. McGee tells about this Dr. Adam Smith, who traveled the Middle East and loved to write about his journeys. And he one time wanted to hire an Arab guide to guide him on his next trek. And so he said, who do I ask? And they pointed to him and said, go get that young man. He is good at what he does. So he went over to the young man and said, I want you to do this for me. You lead me and I'll pay you. And he said, no, I first have to bury my father. And his father was sitting right next to him, alive and well. He couldn't leave. What he was saying was, I can't leave until my father is gone. I have responsibility. So I will do this someday, but not now, and it may be a while, so get comfortable because someday I might. I don't think Jesus means you can't go to a funeral, especially your own family. I don't think that's what he's getting at, but he is trying to say, do you understand what is asked of you? Apparently, these men were coming to Jesus from two very different experiences, but had the same desire. But did they know what discipleship meant? Did they? There's one priority that matters, and it's not the dead or your parents. It's not the details of all of this life. It is something bigger. Wright says what Jesus was doing was so important, so urgent, so immediate, that it was the one thing that mattered. Whatever else you were thinking of doing, this comes first. And he says Jesus' sovereign authority sweeps through Sweeps through like a fresh wind coming through an open window and turning all the papers upside down. If following Jesus is nice and sweet and comfortable and easy, you might need to reread some of the verses that Jesus talks about what it means. If these two guys are sincerely, desperately desiring to follow Jesus, the response seems harsh. It is possible that both of them are more concerned about what this looks like to follow Jesus than what it actually was. Robertson says maybe this first guy's full of self-confidence and self-complacency. He's overly enthusiastic. The second guy overly cautious. He's so reticent to follow Jesus, he's not even sure if he can or when he can. What this means, his response is first things first. As you've heard many times, keeping the main thing the main thing. So maybe the first one hasn't thought it all the way through. The second one thinks so much he's not ready. And both of them, he says, do you know what this means? Two different guys, same truth. What does it mean to follow Jesus? And this is where it comes to you. You can call yourself a Christian. Lots of people do. You can go to church. Lots of people do. But following Jesus includes sacrifice. It means giving up. If preachers and churches are in the habit of telling people, if you just follow Jesus, you'll be healthy and happy and rich and successful, it will be an easy road of nothing but blessings, could I just say that is a lie? If preachers and churches want to tell you, you follow Jesus and just you determine when you can squeeze him in. I know you're busy. I know you have lots to do. There's lots of things that matter. But if you could just make a little time for Jesus, like maybe on a Sunday morning, it's going to be just fine. That is not true. The truth is discipleship means sacrifice. And it means different ways of sacrificing in different people, in different cultures, in different times. But discipleship means counting the cost and following Jesus first and determining to say, he is my focus in this life and I have only one focus in this life. First. Card reminds us Jesus doesn't accept volunteers. He calls for disciples, lifelong students who are never finished on the journey and the discipline of following Jesus intently. What matters is not these men's sincerity or their lack thereof, he says, but rather Jesus' radical command. In light of Jesus' identity, he says, the absolute lordship, then nothing, absolutely nothing should come before him. All of our old obligations vanish when you take up his cross and follow him. Hey, did you notice Matthew added to the healings in verse 7, not just that he did it, but then he goes back to Isaiah, what we first read this morning, Isaiah 53, and said, he took up our infirmities, bore our diseases. Obviously, Jesus' healing of these people was also fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy. But I have to believe Isaiah is pointing way past the physical body. Great that their bodies were healed. Great that they were now free from demons. Great that life was good again. But that promise, that prophecy goes way beyond just what happens in this life. It's what he did that will carry us through to the next. It's what he did to make sure we could be with him forever. What was impressive was not just that these people had a new day and a new vision and a new life. It's that there was hope because of Jesus for the life beyond this one. Do you know what Jesus did for you? Do you know what Jesus willingly went through for all of us? Isaiah said it, and Jesus did it. He started off very soon with this place of dishonor in a cattle stall. He didn't have much in the early days, and he grew up as a boy, and we don't even know most of his explorations and growing up years. But he grew up in some ways, as Isaiah would say, without honor. Just know how he looked, and you would think he's unimpressive. Jesus was just a normal Jew. Nobody looked at him and said, you must be the Son of God. I can see the halo around you. You are glowing, sir. He was a normal Jew. And as he grew, What set him apart now in his ministry years was his healing and his words, his teaching and his preaching, what he could say and what he could do, and all with great authority. But what makes us wonder is not just what he did in this life, where he already started suffering on his way to the cross, but when he got to the cross, he took our pain. He bore our sorrow and our suffering. God struck him. God afflicted him. God punished him. Why? Because that was meant for me. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. And the greatest irony ever is our peace is from his punishment. Our healing came from his wounds. Our salvation comes through the crucifixion. All of my sins that I have done for all of my life and will continue to do, although I hate it, have been placed on him, and he suffered for it. What was due me, he did. What should have been my terror, he took. What I deserved, he determined to bear himself alone and die fully alone. So he suffered, and he bled, and he died, so I could live. You may say that's not fair, and I agree with you. I'm not sure I'll ever fully understand it. I just hope to live my life in gratitude for it. And I assume that's why you're here too. For one more time, one more Sunday, to at least on this day say, thank you. It's why we have chosen, many of us, to give our life to him. He was crucified for me. And in Paul's language, I have been crucified with him. With Christ. I turn my back on my sin, and every day I wake up, I have to keep killing that old man who wants to live. When I went down in those waters of baptism, I was also covered by grace, covered by blood, covered by forgiveness, covered by the Spirit of God. It is now my calling, it is my honor, it is my sacred duty to live my life in honor of him, no matter what it costs. Did you know that we don't know from the scriptures what happened to Peter at the end of his life? Jesus speaks about Peter's end, kind of gives him this forewarning of what's going to happen. So we know it's not going to end well. We know he's going to die and die for the Lord, but we don't know exactly what kind of martyr's death it will be. We don't know about his wife either, how she lost her life, Peter's wife. But Clement of Alexandria, if he knew what he was talking about, and he lived close enough to maybe know, he talks about Peter and his wife as they died together in faith. The story he tells, not from the scriptures, but the story he tells says that Peter had to watch his wife suffer and then die before he was killed. He watched her with his own eyes die, and then they killed him. And it is said in the story that he encourages her. He calls her by name and comforts her. And he says to her before she dies, remember the Lord. Just remember the Lord. And she dies, and he dies. What about you? I don't know that you will be killed because you are a disciple of Jesus. I doubt you will, but then again, I don't know. There may come a time in our day when all of us are rounded up for our faith in Jesus, at least to be ridiculed, maybe to be killed. I hope not, maybe so. But do you know what you would do? Will you be a disciple of Jesus, faithful to him till the day you die, no matter how you die, because you would do anything for him? Will you go anywhere he leads you, even to your own cross? Have you counted your cost? Have you considered what is required of you? Have you given up the excuses and determined, no matter the sacrifice, that you will follow Jesus? Would you say this morning, in the way we will sing it, wherever he leads, I will follow? Let's stand and sing this song.